Camera and mute.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Robert Half legal presentation today. And we're going to be their legal recruiters telling all about interviewing, hiring, and onboarding, and also talking about legal career trends in our new remote world. So I want to introduce our speakers today. We have John Lucchese, who's the VP and Senior Recruiting Manager of Robert Half Legal. John's a Vice President, and he's been with Robert Half's Legal Permanent Placement Division in San Francisco for a while. He specializes in direct hire placement of attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, compliance officers, and other legal professionals with Robert Half Legal's law firm, corporate legal department, and other legal service provider clientele throughout Northern California. So prior to becoming a legal recruiter, John was a practicing attorney in Contra Costa County, and after graduating from McGeorge School of Law in 2006, he became an associate at commercial litigation boutique firm in Lafayette, and later joined an insurance defense practice in Walnut Creek. John's been around for a while. He's a great resource to all of us in Contra Costa County. We also have with us Jennifer Shin, who is the branch manager for Robert Half in Oakland. She is also a VP. And Jennifer has made over 14,000 placements with over 400 East Bay clients. Last year, Jen finished as #1 in the world for the entire Robert Half legal division, again being recognized to Robert Half's Chairman's Club, her third consecutive appearance. Jennifer and her team specialize in interim project-based placement of attorneys, paralegals, contracts managers, legal secretaries, assistants, and other legal professionals. Her clients range from law firms, corporations, and nonprofits in Contra Costa, Alameda, Solano, and Sacramento County. After graduating from the University of Santa Barbara with a double major in psychology and sociology, Jen worked as a paralegal for an estate planning and real estate firm in Santa Barbara. While she enjoyed her time at the firm, Jennifer decided to pivot her career into legal recruiting to pursue her passion for helping individuals find their dream jobs and companies find great talent. So Jen is also a great friend of lawyers in Contra Costa County. She's been around for a while, and she really knows her stuff. And she's a great friend to the Bar Association as well. So I want to turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Anne. Oh my gosh, that was perfect. John, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Anne, for one, asking us to be a resource here to the Bar Association about what law firms are doing right now, given the unprecedented times of COVID-19. It's definitely changed the landscape of how law firms are doing business, how they're hiring, how they're managing their staff, and how they're basically continuing the practice of law, but not inside the brick and mortar offices, but being able to practice law completely remotely. And then there's some firms who are acting as essential services and are continuing their practice in their own offices, but maintaining social distance among employees. So Jen and I wanted to take up the invitation from Anne and talk to you about what law firms are doing locally to hire, interview, and onboard staff and employees completely remotely. So as I just explained, the current landscape has been changed. Some firms have actually cut their staff drastically, and there's been even some firm closures that we've heard of. But for the most part, law firms are switching their operations remotely, and some firms are actually hiring and doing really well during this crisis. Their practice was strong before the crisis. And then since the crisis has hit, the demand on their services has not been impacted. So they're hiring and onboarding employees remotely. So that's what we're here to talk about. So I kind of went over the first two slides. Jen, you want to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping into hiring, it may seem a little bit odd. I know, we all read the news, and I'm sure you're seeing kind of the unemployment claims that are coming through. But surprisingly, what we've seen is that some companies, and not all of them, obviously, some of them are hiring and continuing to hire throughout the pandemic. And some of them are actually hiring more. And I think there was a little bit of a time, there was a pause that happened in April and May. And I know John and I have both seen an increase even just in the last couple of weeks, which we're very excited about. And I think too, as we're kind of thinking about hiring remotely, because this is going to be our new normal for a while, how do we face the challenges of an all remote recruiting process for those, hiring managers or businesses that are hiring? So, some companies are experiencing growth, and these are kind of the areas that we're seeing. Essential services, of course, anything related to food delivery, restaurants, we're seeing it in financial services. So that includes banks and mortgage refinance providers. We are also seeing it in some, in shipping, in, legal services. That's considered essential service. Obviously, it differs state to state, county to county. A huge uptick in the state and local government. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster just because, obviously, the CARES Act and the funding of that with SBA. But we're starting to see that trickle down, and a lot of the banks and credit unions have been partnering with, staffing firms or looking on their own to rehire. Reshoring has also been, a huge topic for a lot of companies. They're forced to kind of bring back, some of those functions that they had sent to maybe China or India. And so, supply chains are coming into question. John, I think you're up.
Yeah. So not only are a lot of those essential service companies continuing to operate as normal, but whether it's in their offices or having staff work partly remotely or completely remotely, but most businesses that are service businesses are continuing to move forward, and they're just having staff work from home. This slide talks about the SBA and CARES Act. I'm not sure if any of you have taken advantage of some of the new loan efforts that have been approved by the federal government, so that you can borrow some money to continue hiring and continuing employing your staff. But that's helped some in letting businesses continue their operations. But so if what we're here for, we recruiters have not closed our shop because of the impact of the economic impact of COVID-19. We are continuing to help our clients, and we do have clients that are hiring. So what do you do as a business owner if you need to hire employees, but you've never done that remotely? Well, two resources that you always can go to. I think these are the best, two initial resources other than calling John and Jen at Robert Half Legal. You always can ask your current employees if they know of good candidates. A lot of us know about neighbors and friends that have lost their jobs or been furloughed due to COVID-19. So it's always good just to ask around to see if people within your own network are looking for work and they might be a good fit for the positions that you're hiring for at your firm. The other thing you can do is always reach out to former employees who are stars. Again, people have been laid off from their jobs, so you might just contact a former star employee who's actively looking for work. So those are two resources.
Okay, perfect. The next thing is remote interim staff. I know, a lot of folks are looking for jobs, obviously, with the changes that have happened in the last couple of months. And, the economy pre-COVID was at a peak, and I think a lot of folks had direct hire positions. But, as we kind of go throughout the rest of 2020 into 2021, a lot of organizations and companies are going to be examining their needs. And, if a skill isn't something where, a a skill set that they may require for only 3 months or for a particular project, they may decide to bring in interim staff. Or if someone goes out on leave or there's a situation where an increase in workload happens, a lot of companies are going to be supplementing their current staff with temps. And the reason being is that they're going to provide support, provide a stopgap relief, and then be able to provide value for just that set period. And then lastly, I think a lot of organizations, after they go through layoffs, there's less folks to do the work that's required, and so long hours will be logged. And so we expect, and we've already started to see more of those requests from our clients, whether it's attorney or support needs, on an interim basis. Specialized staffing firms. And I think John and I, obviously we have that background and that's the industry that we're in. But one of the values that I think clients have working with us is that, we are very familiar with remote hiring. A lot of times we're meeting our candidates through video and doing phone screens. So this is a very, typical process for us. And so we're able to consult with clients. If a client hasn't done this before, we're happy to provide information and be a resource along the way. The other thing too is that we have candidates usually available immediately, and we vetted them. So before we, place anyone, we would go through an interview process, be able to tell what skills they have exactly and what industries they're looking to be placed in, and then be able to place them really quickly. So some of our candidates, we may call them that same day because a client has, for example, a corporate attorney need for 2 months, and we can get them placed within a day or 2 days, and sometimes the same day.
Right. And so one of the benefits of reaching out to Robert Half Legal, which is an international staffing firm with lots of resources. I think at the height of the economy, we were a $6 billion company. Hopefully we'll remain in the ballpark this year, despite the impact of COVID. But we are a very well-resourced company who takes who takes very seriously our investment in technology, so that we can help our consultants and temp employees have the best technology available. So one of the things that we have available with regard to remote staff is that we have a secure setup through Amazon Workspaces, so that our remote employees, our temporary employees, will be backed by Amazon Workspaces, additionally by our own security operations center, so that they can access your company's database securely, and there will be no, enterprise risk issues with regard to, misappropriation of company files. So that's one of the benefits of working through Robert Half Legal, is that we have a software through Amazon Workspaces, so our remote temporary employees can access your databases securely. And each virtual workspace includes enterprise-level security policies, leading-edge protection, and up-to-date patching. And it's a remote workspace with peace of mind built in. I was reading you exactly what is written here, but it is actually really innovative. And I know Jen has placed a lot of temporary staff that have accessed, who've used this type of software, and because our customers are very happy with this setup. And then, okay, so that's the benefit of working through Robert Half Legal, is that we have a great tech background, and we have a great tech infrastructure to help onboard remote employees. How do you do interviewing? Well, now all interviews are being done when you are hiring new employees or hiring a temp. All interviews are being done remotely. So what Robert Half does is that we, through either Zoom, or we also use Microsoft Teams, we help set up those remote interviews so you can have a face-to-face meeting with your prospective hires, and you can interview them just as you would in an in-person setting, but via video technology. So Robert Half helps with setting up all of those remote interviews. We even have done a process where we, if you want to do first-round interviews all in one setting, like a 2-hour 2-hour window, we can set up, 4 interviews, 30 minutes each, for you as the hiring manager to interview through Zoom, for example, 4 candidates for 20 minutes each, back to back. And it essentially simulates a type of first round interview where you get to decide, in one sitting, who are the top finalists that you want to bring back and do further interviews with.
Great. Okay. So just some tips. I mean, I think, every time we've been talking to clients, and really even just in our best practices as an organization, we really stress the virtual interview or virtual meeting with candidates. And you're going to get a lot from that you wouldn't be able to just from a phone screen. So as you're conducting those interviews, these are great tips, whether you're a candidate or you're the one hiring. Don't try to wing it. So definitely have all your details worked out, whether, who's calling who, what platform are you using, make sure that, as the interviewee, if you don't have that information as to who you're interviewing with, it's always good to ask. That's where having a recruiter is maybe a plus, because we'll do all that legwork for you. The other thing is try it out the day before. So if you know you're going to be on a certain technology, make sure you give yourself ample time to, test it out, try to open it, make sure your video is set up properly. And then also have a backup plan. So, we live in this world of technology, and every now and again it fails. And so maybe, the software goes down or you lose power. And so you have to have, make sure you have information with who you're talking to, their email, so that you can pick up that conversation if something were to happen. Second tip is to minimize distractions. So, especially now that we're all working remote, I know we're in our homes and sometimes we have kids running around or pets running around. So having a good space, making sure that you've kind of let people in your household know that you need a reserved time to be able to interview ahead of time.
Yeah, and one thing that the remote interviews will bear is essentially the tech savviness of the applicant. We are now a lot of us workers are now working remotely, which is going to require an extra level of comfort using digital workspaces, video meeting technology. Basically using your laptop in a completely remote setting. So when interviewing applicants, you do have to ask questions to make sure that they're going to be comfortable using the technology remotely. So, asking questions about their tech skills, ask them for examples of when they were able to problem solve and troubleshoot if they had a tech issue. Ask for examples of when they've been able to take up initiatives to improve productivity, working with technology. So those are some good questions to include as part of your interview process, because you do need to make sure, especially in 2020, that your applicants or whoever you hire is tech savvy. Some other questions that you can think about in a remote interview. It is always good to kind of have some questions pre-planned for a remote interview, just as you would probably for an in-person interview. One of the benefits actually of a remote interview versus an in-person interview is that you can, get your notes without being so obvious about it in an in-person setting. But some of the questions that you could ask could be, what drives you to succeed as a professional and to keep learning new things? What management styles do you thrive under? That's always a very good question, because you can get an idea of the applicant, what kind of management style they prefer and what do they do well with. How do you prepare to work with colleagues you disagree with or you have difficulty getting along with? That's always a good question to ask. Tell me about the best project you've worked on and what made it work so well for you. How do you adapt to change? So these are some questions that you can ask in your interviews. And obviously, if you partner with Robert Half, we always can provide some great questions to include as part of your interview process. So that's one of the benefits of working with a skilled recruiter. On to you, Jen.
Great. The last benefit that we see with remote interviews, and this is a good tip for anyone who's looking right now, really think about your technical setup, because most organizations, even if they're an essential service, they have quite a bit of their employees working from home. And during the video interview, a lot of clients are going to be assessing, how is your bandwidth, where, are you taking it from your computer? Does it look like you're taking it from your phone? They may ask questions around, what is your work from home setup? What has been your history of working remote? And what are some of the best practices that you've learned as you've done this, in the past? And so that's going to become even more key. Onboarding, I think onboarding is one of those areas where, for myself, as I think about, some of the folks who are a little bit newer on my team, the support that they need, I've completely changed how I manage. And, the first day, the first week, the first month are going to dictate the retention of your employees. So this is something that, a lot of companies are looking at, managers are looking at, because whether it's a temporary employee or a full-time person that you're bringing in, you really want to bring them into the culture and into the company so that they don't feel isolated, because there's always a risk of that when you're working from home by yourself, that who you can contact if an issue arises, and then also making sure that they have enough instruction, that they're doing the project correctly, since they're not going to have the oversight of you next door or the manager next door, right? So here's just a few best practices for onboarding.
Yeah, so one really good practice is to make sure that your workspace, your remote workspace for your new employee who's going to be starting their job day one at their home and not in your office, make sure they're set up properly and they have everything they need to begin their first day of work successfully. So you have to get all the technical aspects taken care of, make sure they have their email address, they have intranet access, and their other credentials. And then also make sure that they have any equipment that they would need, such as like a laptop. Make sure that you have either mailed that to them via courier, or you've set up a safe place for curbside pickup. Such as I had an employee who started, I think, 2 weeks after the shelter in place went into effect. They met at the Hayward BART station. Both of them lived in Hayward. So the office manager of this big law firm in San Francisco met with the new employee who was a legal secretary. And thankfully they had a safe location where they could do the handoff of the laptop. But yeah, that's what employers are doing these days to start their remote employees. Is this my slide or yours? Oh, it's my slide. And then give them an enthusiastic welcome. Both of these points are really critical, because I have had issues both, pre-COVID and post-COVID, where one of the big gripes of new employees is they weren't ready for me. I came and they didn't have my desk set up, or there wasn't, no one really, came by my desk to say hi. Well, now as new remote employees, they'll want to hear from you within on their first day of the job. They want to, be on the phone with you as the hiring manager. Perhaps you can set up a virtual happy hour to greet your new employee, or virtual lunch. So make sure you do something that welcomes the new employee and really welcomes them into the culture of the firm, even if it's done all remotely.
Perfect. And then, give them a go-to contact. So someone, pair them up with a work buddy, someone who's been there for a while, a few years, who understands, who does what function, and how to manage through some of the systems, just to kind of combat the isolation that can happen when, everyone's working remote and from home, and more of a mentorship style rather than, on a formal on-the-job type of training. Additionally, creating an online manual. I know a lot of clients are starting to do this, which is great. We have a little bit more downtime. with COVID, or maybe we don't, but we need to do this, where, we have a list for the systems that, we're using, how to access them, Q&As, who the team is. So, kind of having an org chart and also having contact info, links to, important slides or information that they need. So just kind of the basics.
Great. And so, and then always be available to your new teammates, your new employees. Make sure they have your cell phone. Make sure that they know that they can call you whenever they have an issue that they need help with. And if you can't be available, a lot for your new employee, make sure, as Jen said, to set up a go-to contact so that, maybe a colleague, their peer that they can go to for assistance. Because again, the issue that, well, not really my clients, actually, I've actually talked to some remote employees who have started jobs, and then they've called me and said, I'm at a new employer. It's not feeling right. I know everything is remote these days, but they have not reached out to me at all. I wait by the email waiting for new assignments. They don't come. So then they reach out to me saying, I should probably be looking for a new job, given that there's not much happening at the firm that just hired me. So you just want to avoid situations like that. So you have to be available to new employees. You have to make sure that they have all the resources and tech resources available to them. And potentially you should even be creating a remote, onboarding plan that helps them get trained. You might even have training materials already, but make sure that those training materials are modified to take account for the remote workspace. So, and then that does conclude what we're going to come talk to you about. Oh, I guess there's another slide. I'll be adaptive. Sorry. So we have to adapt to the new normal in working with colleagues. Even in workspaces where people will be coming back, to working in the office. You just have to make sure you have in place new rules about socializing and just interacting with your colleagues in person. No handshakes, meetings in one room. I don't know how that's going to work, but I guess we've heard different things. People might be wearing masks. They'll be sitting far apart from each other. Places that have windows can open. I think offices are opening up windows or keeping doors open. But there's going to be a change in the actual workspace for those employees that have to go back to a brick and mortar office. So you have to, as the hiring manager, you have to make sure that you enforce health and safety guidelines to comply with the new normal. So yeah, so that concludes our talk. But what I wanted to say is that this is actually more of a promotion of Jen's job. A lot of what we talked about, especially about onboarding, it's a lot of tasks that you have to do. If you do bring on temp employees through Robert Half Legal, Robert Half does take care of a lot of that tech aspect of making sure that our remote temps are taken care of, and even some of that QC aspects of just checking in on the temps, making sure they're happy, making sure they're doing well. That's what Jen and her team does. I do direct hire, so I do what a traditional headhunter would do, is I find employees for your company and I place them as direct hires with your organization. But the benefits of working with Robert Half is that we take care of a lot of the stuff that we covered in these slides. We take care of it ourselves. So that's what's good about working with really skilled recruiters.
Yeah, and I think too, just kind of wrapping it up, I know you're going to talk a little bit about legal careers. What does it look like now? most people know that, a lot of companies and law firms have been very cautious and hesitant to hire in the last 2 months, just to see what the impact of COVID and shelter in place would have on the economy, but also their business functions. I know some companies saw a dip, others saw, kind of a peak, but then things started to kind of plateau. And we have seen positions coming through and they're starting to increase more and more. But the trend that we're seeing is that a lot of the roles are remote. And so if they're not partially remote, they're 100% remote. We're seeing more law firms hiring in other locations, so other states even, and becoming more comfortable with that idea. We are able to help clients transition to remote work. So if you guys are hearing of that, we can absolutely do that. We have an IT and tech division that will place professionals or help with scanning files into a cloud, whatever the need may be. Hot areas for us are going to be, hot practice areas where our clients hiring insurance coverage, insurance litigation. We're seeing a lot in estate planning. Class action is huge. In the last 6 weeks, there's been about 1,000 COVID-19 cases filed related to, price gouging with Albertsons. Everyone's heard of the Princess Cruise class action litigation, Core Powers being sued because of the mass layoff. So there's a lot going on. Labor and employment, construction, workers' comp, real estate, criminal defense is on the rise right now, obviously with everything going on. And then upcoming areas that we expect are going to be bankruptcy, landlord-tenant, litigation across the board, and then corporate is probably going to be increasing as well. Who is actually doing the hiring? We're seeing a lot of solos and small firms hiring just maybe one person. Large companies are still expanding and they've started to pick it up more recently. Biotech, financial services, healthcare companies, construction, nonprofits. Surprisingly, I thought they would lose funding, but they've seemed to be hiring more than we thought they would. And then government has been huge. And John and I, we really appreciate the partnership with Contra Costa Bar Association. So we are offering a promo. Of course, if you're a candidate, we'd love to work with you. We're always happy to keep our ears and eyes open for opportunities that kind of match your skill set. But in addition, we're offering 8 hours free on the temp side to our clients who let us know if they have a need before the end of June. And then John?
Yeah, and then on the direct hire side, since I do direct hire placement, we're offering a 25% discount for Contra Costa County Bar Association members who hire new employees. We're going to continue that throughout the summer because we know that things have changed with COVID. But there, as Jen said, we do have a lot of clients, in particular in those practice areas that she mentioned, as well as for our legal department clients, and for those industries that she listed. There is a significant amount of hiring happening. So we want to make sure to keep the momentum going and keep the hiring going. So I'm offering a 25% discount on my placement fee for any placements that are made this summer.
Wow, that's great. Thank you guys.
Yeah. Of course.
Awesome.
We love working with you and Teresa with Contra Costa County Bar Association. So we come to as many events as possible. We love our partnership with all the county firms. So thank you for setting this up. And before we go, we wanted to take questions from Lori and Nagar if they have any questions.
I'm just going to stop the recording. So, and then we'll take some questions.